Hey, what's happening? My name is Nisankae, NSP, and welcome to my YouTube channel. So this one is going to be a small BTS and breakdown. But before we go into today's video, say hello to my friend Vishal Ashley. It's just cool like that. So this one is going to be quick, but I'm going to explain in full how we shot, edited, and sound designed the whole thing. We shot this in a railway tunnel in Hatton. For the camera rig, it was my A7 III at 24mm G master lens and an old Ronin SE gimbal. But a mobile phone on a smaller gimbal would have been just fine. To be honest, it would have been much easier to get the job done if it was a mobile rig. So filming in 4K is a must, as we will be cropping in the footage like 2 to 2.5 times in post for the effect. So filming this is pretty straightforward. It's just one simple push-in shot. So one useful tip when filming with a DSLR or a mirrorless camera is to start the shot from subject up close and walk backwards. Because if you do it the other way around, the camera might start hunting for focus in the end and it will ruin the shot. So for this shot, I had Vishal hold a static pose throughout the shot because I knew I would be using speed ramps in the edit later on. So another useful tip that will make the edit so easy is to get a decently stabilized shot in camera. And the best way is to do the ninja walk with a gimbal in torchlight mode. But these shots of mine weren't that stabilized because me running inside a railway tunnel with that sort of a camera rig wasn't as easy as I had imagined. So I had to try a few sessions of trial and error with the After Effects motion stabilizer and the warp stabilizer to get the shots where I needed for the edit. So I will cover that in a future video, but as I said, if you could manage to get a decently stabilized shot in camera, you wouldn't have to struggle much in the edit like I did. So now on to the main trick of this edit, Dolly Zoom. Now Dolly Zoom is where the camera zooms in the opposite direction to the direction in which the camera physically moves. So in our intended shot here, the camera is physically moving towards the subject. So for the effect to take place, we should be zooming out simply by keyframing the scale of the footage. For those of you who are not so sure what keyframes are, let me take you to my timeline here on Final Cut Pro. But remember, the principles are same in all the NLEs. So a keyframe is an anchor point in our timeline which represents a specific parameter of our footage. So these are the parameters I'm talking about: the scale, rotation, opacity, etc. So by changing the keyframe values, we can simply animate any parameter from one point in our timeline to another point in our timeline. It can be anything. It can be the scale of the footage, it can be the rotation of the footage, it can be the saturation, it can be the exposure, anything. For example, if I want to change the color of his shirt from here to here, I would start with the hue saturation curve first, and to affect only the color of his shirt and not the whole footage, I'll have to add a mask. As there is camera movement in the shot, I'll have to track the mask. So I'll position and resize the mask here and set a keyframe and go to the end point and reposition and resize the mask, which will create a new keyframe automatically. And the mask is tracking now. So now I can set a hue value and add a keyframe here, then go to the end point and set another hue value, which will automatically create a new keyframe. And there you go. The color is animated. So I can't emphasize enough how crucial it is to be able to handle keyframes in order to create excitement in an otherwise boring footage. And the editing software doesn't matter, because from Luma Fusion to something advanced like the DaVinci Resolve, they all allow you to handle keyframes. So for you to try and practice keyframing, I am Google Driving these two footages of mine in a link down below, so feel free to download them and do as you please. So I'm calling this a breakdown instead of a tutorial because I'm not going to redo the whole edit from scratch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my timeline and break apart what I've already done so that you can have a clear idea without me ending up confusing you. So this is my timeline, a very skeletal and primitive one, because there's only two clips in this loop. There's no advanced transitions, it's just a hard cut between these two shots. I always love using a flare overlay over the transition point, which makes the cut less hard. This overlay is 1 second length of a 4K clip which has some cinematic flaring light. So I add the overlay on top of the transition point and change the blend mode to screen, which will make it transparent. By clicking the right and left arrow keys, you can move back and forth by 1 frame at a time. So I move backwards by 3 frames like that and cut, and again 3 frames forward like that and cut. So I'm using my custom shortcuts, but you can bring in the blade tool by clicking here, and the default shortcut is Command B on a Mac. But I could have used the whole 1 second length of the overlay and it'll still look great. Same goes for the fire wrap here, which again is 1 second in length. All I've done here is change the blend mode to screen and reposition so that it looks as if it's actually wrapping him. And for this shockwave-like effect on this sick kick of the track, I have separated 8 to 9 frames of the clip by using the blade tool here and here. And I have added what's called an earthquake effect. So you can find the plugin by typing it in here. But make sure you have selected all video and audio when searching for plugins. And as I wanted the plugin to affect only the center of the frame, I added a mask and adjusted it like that. I didn't have to track this mask like we did before, as there's not much camera movement within these 9 to 10 frames. So the kick goes sick like that. You can always react to musical cues like that and add some excitement to your edit. Now the dolly zoom. Here the camera moves towards Vishal. So as I already mentioned, I should zoom away from him. That is, zoom out from him. To make it simple, take this static frame. To zoom out, we should decrease the scale value. Likewise, to zoom in, we should increase the scale value. But to start the zoom out, I don't have enough scale to decrease from. It's already 100%. So what we do is we make the starting scale value bigger, like 200%. Now, that's a 2-time crop in, so half the resolution. As our clip is already 4K in resolution and our idea is to put out a 1080p render, we don't have to worry much about losing resolution here. So I make the starting scale 200% and add a keyframe there. And we are also going to keyframe the position in order to keep Vishal at the center throughout. Now, as of where to start the effect, that's totally subjective. I'm choosing to start the effect right here. So I add another keyframe to keep the scale anchored at 200%. And as the playhead moves towards the end, we are zooming out. So I'm decreasing the scale to 100% again and adjust the position. We can also get the help of a horizon tool by going to View and select Show Horizon. That way we can make sure the subject is centered throughout. And you also see why we added a keyframe to the position in the first place. So now you can see the effect coming to life. It's subtle now, but if we speed ramp it, the effect is even more pronounced. You get the idea. So the same goes for the tunnel clip, and editing to the musical rhythm is again totally subjective. Now for the sound design, I thought this effect looked like as if my display is going to distort, crack and shatter at one point. So I found these wooden creak sounds from Epidemic Sound and layered it in stacks, so it gives a fullness to the effect. And the whooshes are from Ben TK's sound effects pack, which I will link down below so you can check out and purchase if you like it. Now these are assets you will never regret purchasing if you're serious into editing. And for the levels of audio, usually my strategy for smaller loops like this is to bring down all the audio to like minus 10 dB and adjust the individual clip levels to my taste. So I didn't strain much on the ambient sound as it would not cut through a music track like this one. And when you lay sound effects in stacks, your audio will always peak above 0 dB. And one thing that will save your final audio from peaking is to create a combined clip of all the audio in your timeline and add a limiter and leave it as it is. So I will cover some advanced audio stuff in a future video where I have voiceovers on top of music and sound effects. So that's about it. But I think now it's time for some real talk. Now, obviously, this sequence and the whole dolly zoom thing is way overdone. And I also believe it is better to overdo something that we are learning for the first time in order to tone it down and make it subtle over time. But I want to show you one last thing about this one footage here, the shot of the tunnel. Let me make this clip normal again. Let me take the speed ramping, the reversing and the keyframes off. I'm taking everything off the footage now. Okay? It's just a simple tracking shot of the tunnel now. It might not seem like an exciting shot now, and it might not disorient you, of course. But I want you to have a look at this same shot in a totally different context. Have a look. So what do you think? We have two options. We can create something like the Dolly Zoom and disorient people and they like it, or we can make someone feel like they are on a train all of a sudden. The beauty of being a creator is we can do both and still be able to make someone's day. So I'm leaving it right there. Once again, my name is Nisankae, NSP, and I will see you in my next one. Until then, take it easy.